All right, folks, welcome back from break. We're starting out on Unit 0. We're actually going to dig in to, it's kind of like course content, but it's also kind of like course introductory stuff. But why do I number my first unit of instruction with a 0? Why would an IT guy do that? We're going to start with Unit 1. Anybody have a thought? Yeah, and that's Michael. That's a good way to say it. So most computer systems are, or when we start working with numbers, right? So when a computer looks at a number, we start counting. We as humans are taught from when we're kids. You start counting with 1, right? Because you got like fingers and toes. There's no 0 finger, so you start counting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And thus we have a base 10 number system. Why? Because we just happen to have 10 fingers. If we had 12, maybe we'd have a base 12 number system, right? But when you think about the numeric system that we use, there are 10 singular single-digit numbers, 0 through 9, right? And then when you use all those up, then you go 1, 0, and start over again. So 0 is the first number. Right. And it also happens to be not really a lot of content in it. So it works out kind of perfect for a starting unit, but that's the why. So when you get into programming, whenever you start to do any sort of computer software counting, it always starts at 0. Computers start at 0 because that's where the numbers start. Humans' brains don't. So we always have to accommodate for that. That's why. As you get into Unit 0, and let me make sure my screen is shared here. Are you guys seeing my screen? You are seeing my screen, right? I'm just not getting a highlight on the edges, so I always wonder. I'm going to pause the recording here just for a second. All right, so right here at the top of Unit 0, what you're going to first see is kind of a reiteration of some of the stuff in the syllabus, the basics, right? Course description, the competencies, our book, and what stuff is required and how to get a hold of them. Just real basics. Kind of like syllabus light, if you will. A little bit of a welcome message from me. I'm going to say it's not really necessarily needed in a course where we're face-to-face, but when we're often mixed with online environments, I always include this information so people know how to get started and to get to know a little bit about me. I've been doing this computer stuff for quite a long time. Thankfully, made the right choice when I was younger and switched, like I said, from a business degree to a computer degree. Who would have thought like 30 years ago, you'd be like, yeah, I think computers might go somewhere, but here's, you chuckle about it now, but here's the thing. We're still at the start of it all, it's still brand new. We're only a few decades in, so we're still at the start. It's not too late to get into the game. You will see that in many of my units of instruction, like I have here, that I have lots of videos. And Antoine, and thank you for saying that you took the time yesterday to look at the syllabus and look at the syllabus video. So, that's basically what I did the first hour of class, and you see that's pretty normal. It takes about an hour on that first day. I do also have older versions, and then I have also for our accelerated group, that's what the full stack is. You guys are not full stack people, by the way. But I usually leave the archive versions in there for various reasons. The videos that I'm recording today will appear in this spot by tomorrow. So basically I'll go home, I render them, I push them up to YouTube, allow YouTube to do all the closed captioning that it does, and then I share a link here. And then I'll mark it as new once I add it. So if you really want to relive that last hour, you totally can. That's up to you. Mostly it's for the benefit of my online people, and for people that might happen to miss it. Link here to the syllabus acknowledgement. Hopefully you guys already did that. If you did not, please click that link. Takes you once again to the discussion board where you click this create thread button, type in a subject, type in something like I read the syllabus, and hit submit, right? And once again, my standard disclaimer is I do not grade any of your work until you acknowledge that syllabus. All right. We talked about the book already. Don't wait to get it. you're waiting for money or whatever, and I get if that's the case. And if you're having difficulties getting it, you should let me know. But please try to get it right away, because right away next week, we're going to start digging into case studies. Right away today, we're going to start talking book material straight away. So we have 14 chapters to go through, and we have 13 weeks to do it in, right? So at some point, we have to double up a little bit too. Some material we spend more time on than others. The first two big chapters in the book are chapters 2 and 3. The first one's all the basics of HTML. The third one's all the basics of CSS, right? And so we spend a little bit more time on that because it's that kind of important, right? If you don't get this stuff, you're not getting any of the rest of it. And then from there, it kind of starts to move a little bit faster, right? There's not so much material presented all at once. It's smaller concepts, so it's possible to hit a couple chapters in a week, and that's how we're going to proceed. All right, so get the book right away. If for any reason you don't have it and still need to do the case studies, I think for the first unit or two, I kind of have copies of the case studies embedded into the unit. We'll take a look at that in a second. But here's a big question I get from people, especially people that are coming in to college new for the first time, is what equipment do I need, right? I already kind of alluded in the syllabus talk that, really to do a lot of web work, you don't really need a lot of high-end gear. That's kind of one of the beauties of it. But then again, right, that's if you're doing basic web work. But the reality is, as a web software developer, you start to get into some pretty intensive things. You're going to be that person that has 50 tabs open in your browser and maybe 2 or 3 browsers open and a couple development environments and maybe some graphics tools, and you're going to be filling up your screen, and you're going to need some horsepower. So you're not going to be walking into Walmart and go, look, there's a laptop on sale for $299. It runs Windows. I'll buy that one for school. Wrong answer, folks. Don't do that, because you're really going to be wasting your money. The machine's going to fall apart in 2 years, and it's going to be pretty much a doorstop just as fast. Really, what ends up happening is you really want to be more on the business class level machine or a gaming class level machine, typically. Maybe if you guys step around and look at what I have on my desk here, I'm using my own personal gear, and it's a MSI gaming laptop with high-end graphics, lots of RAM, multiple hard drives, 17-inch screen, yada, yada, yada. Why? Because I need that to do my work. I really do. My wife's like, you really need like that expensive of a laptop? I'm like, yes, honey, I do. Absolutely. Probably where this machine differs a little bit from most consumer machines is the graphics portion, because I have a high-end graphics card in here. That's not always true with a lot of laptops. Now, in terms of like getting into the specifics, so I will have people, and it's not that I haven't had people try, so really clever students. I'm like, I'm going to do the whole course of the Chromebook. I'm like, I don't think it's going to work, and then they find out a couple of weeks in, oh man, you're totally right. I can't do it with a Chromebook. Because a Chromebook's not a real computer. It's really akin to like a phone or a tablet. Not that those aren't real computers, but they don't have the same kind of capabilities. It's not so easy to manipulate files on them. It's not easy to, type, or to see a lot of content on the screen all at once. You need a real computer system, and you need to have a really good high-speed internet connection as well at home. The big caveat here at Gateway is we got some really big grants that came through from the federal government during the pandemic. So we all got our stimulus money. Schools got stimulus money too. And one of the ways that was spent is to buy a whole bunch of gear to share with the students if they need it. I thought I saw at least one person carrying a Gateway laptop. Vidal, you have one, right? So when we look at this list of specs here, if you don't think that your equipment can cut it, then you qualify basically, and usually if you're getting any form of like loans or grants or any of that kind of stuff, you usually qualify, right? All you have to do is ask your instructor, and they can put in a request for you to get a machine. And it usually takes a day or something like that. And because you guys are IT students, you get a different level of laptop than a normal student would. So you get more RAM, bigger hard drive, SSD, more CPU, all of it, right? And the why is because you need it, you really do. Now, in terms of, let's talk about the hardware. So our programs here are very, very PC centric, so, unfortunately, most of the world runs Windows. I mean, it's just how it is. It's somewhere in like the 95% plus range, so most computers that you're going to encounter that are either a laptop or a desktop tend to be running Windows. Yeah, in the workplace, yeah, very much so. And part of that is cost, right? Because you can get Windows workstations for a lot less than you can get like a Mac, or in some cases the Linux machine. But it's also about kind of like the infrastructure that runs all of our systems, right? So like all the systems that we're connecting to here, like if you want to print or whatever, all run through Microsoft servers, so that there's kind of like the servers are Windows, the clients are Windows. So that's really, really common. And because you're going into the world of IT, most likely you're going to land in a place that's using PCs, right? Or working on PCs or administering PCs or whatever. So we are very Windows centric. In terms of which version of Windows, our recommendation at this point is Windows 10 or higher. 11, if you're buying a new machine, it's coming with 11 now. Not really a lot of functional difference. The machine I'm currently using that you're looking at the screen of, this is running Windows 10. And then you'll notice that there's kind of a little sidebar there where we recommend either the professional or education version of Windows, which you're not going to find at Best Buy. You're not going to walk in. Very rarely do they have models that'll say Windows Pro, right? The Windows Professional and Education version, kind of synonymous, have features that regular Windows Home does not. For example, remote desktop, file encryption. Those are not available on Windows Home. The ability to turn your machine into a server without a lot of effort, that's also available on the Pro versions. And that's just like the top, like skimming the top of the iceberg on that one. There's a lot more that goes with it. What's kind of interesting about all that is if you buy a machine, you typically get it with Home, unless you buy it online and can specify which one you want. But we can provide you a license key here at Gateway for the education version. Every student gets one, and then you can just simply type it into your system and then unlock the higher level of Windows. I'm not going to do that during today's session because frankly, it's really not needed for this class. But when you get to later classes, you will find that there's going to be a lot of reasons why you do want to have that capability. The process of upgrading is maybe like a 10-minute thing, 20-minute thing on most modern computer systems. It's really just a matter of like going to the system settings, entering a new product key, pressing a button and waiting. And then boom, you got Windows 10 Education. And that key is yours for life, by the way. You can keep using it. The way that Windows has been doing license keys recently, since Windows 10 at least, is they let you use old license keys to unlock current versions of the operating system, which is nice, right? Because in the old days, every time they would upgrade, you'd have to buy a new license key. It gets expensive. And that's a big part of what we pay for when we buy a computer is the software that's on it, not just the hardware. If you have an older version of Windows, so if you have like probably as far back as you should really go to 7 at this point, and I would say you could have 7 or 8 or 8.1. Those will be okay. They'll still do everything. Really, you could do it with older versions as well, but they become insecure, right? The operating systems themselves are no longer secure. They're easily hacked. So there's no reason to really not be running 10 or 11 at this point. In terms of a CPU, we use kind of like an i5 as kind of like a benchmark minimum. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's just a certain type of Intel CPU. i5s tend to be the base level of like the higher quality chips, but Intel for consumers has i5s, i7s, and i9s. Most often you're going to find i5s and i7s in machines. i9s are still kind of out there a little bit. And when we say modern, it is possible to buy an i5 from 10 years ago and run at 1 gigahertz, and you would sit there all day waiting for stuff to happen, versus buying a new one that's probably at 3 gigahertz or something and works a lot faster. So i5s are really determined by what gen they are. So when you're shopping for Intel CPUs, they'll say, like on my laptop here, it says Intel Core i7 10th gen. So it's a 10th gen CPU, and I think they're on 11th and 12th gens are coming out now. But recent is really what you want, right? Because it has more horsepower. It's kind of like having a more powerful motor in a car. CPU makes a world of difference in terms of how your computer operates, right? So are AMD chips okay? Absolutely, right? So if you are, gamers are usually all over this. Like my son built a system, he opted not for Intel, but he did the AMD Ryzen thing, right? Which is a really high-powered CPU, so that's a good choice too. Just make sure it's modern and it's got a lot of horsepower. In terms of RAM, we'll say 8 gigs is a functional minimum, but from all practicality, folks, you should really be at 16 gigs of RAM on a PC these days as a professional minimum. If you're working with 8 gigs of RAM, you will get bottlenecks on your system. It's just the way the architecture is. Running Windows alone requires at least 2 gigs of RAM just to run Windows, right? And throw in a couple services, you got your background stuff running, launch a couple of programs, that RAM fills up quick. More RAM, once again, faster computing. The workstations here in the classroom, if you're curious, are all 32 gigs of RAM and have been for years. The next real important area is the amount of storage that you have. You want to have at least a 500 gig hard drive. So if you have like a laptop, like a lot of people do with like a 250 gig drive, you'll get to some of our later courses, like when we do like ASP.NET, for example, and you need to install Visual Studio. That requires sometimes as much as 100 gigs of space just for that one piece of software, right? So you do that a few times over, that hard drive fills up super fast. So I recommend to students, go for it, get a terabyte sized hard drive and an SSD if at all humanly possible, right? If you can afford it. The performance gain using a solid state drive is so huge. On my previous laptop to this one, I had a spinning platter drive in it. It was a pretty high powered machine for its day. But once I would boot it from cold, being off, it would take 3, 4, 5 minutes before all the stuff loaded and it was actually kind of usable, right? All the, everything's up. Bought an SSD, cloned the drive, dropped it in. Now it's booting in 20 seconds. Big difference in performance. So if you have lots of RAM, good CPU, and an SSD, your machine can scream, right? Throw in a good graphics card, even better, right? So those are the recommendations. Now, the one little feature that usually throws people, and what I like to say is you'll walk into Best Buy, you'll ask the salesperson, glazed over look, no clue what you're talking about. Very few of them will. You'll say, I need a machine that can do virtualization. All right. Okay, that's really cool. Is that like a virtual 3D? No. Virtualization is this, folks. It's the capability to allow your computer to run another operating system while the main operating system is still running. So really what we're doing is we take the CPU, we grab a core or two from the CPU, we grab a portion of RAM and isolate it, and then you can run a separate operating system simultaneously as you're running your main operating system. The question is now, why do we do that? The reason we do that is, let's say you're coding for Android, right? Is that the same as a virtual machine? Exactly, Antoine. That's exactly correct. So you form a virtual machine, which is basically a piece of software that simulates an operating computer that you can load an operating system onto and software, right? So the main reason you'll need it in this program is when you do learn to code for mobile, you need to run virtual Android in order to be able to see your results, right? Or you can plug a cable in and plug into your Android device, for example, right? You can do that too. But there's another reason why programmers use it. Programmers sometimes are tasked with running encoding for operating systems that aren't yet released. So for example, let's say there's a Windows 12 coming down the line, and my job as a coder is to write this piece of software that runs on Windows 12. Well, I don't have a Windows 12 machine. So I run a virtual version of it, run the software inside there, and I have a contained environment where I can test code, blow things up, and nothing happens to my computer, right? That's the why. Mac users, right? So we have a few of them here in the room. Virtualization on Macs is kind of almost a given. A lot of Mac people run Windows on their Macs, by the way. And so all Macs do it. You don't even have to ask. But PCs you do, because if you go in, and especially if you buy a computer with a budget processor, you know, and I say, if you're like below $600-700 on a price for a laptop or a desktop, it probably doesn't virtualize, right? And then you'll get to that class and you'll find out the hard way that you can't do the work. Unfortunately, the only way to verify that it has that feature is you have to reboot the machine. And as it reboots, you'll get like your HP logo or whatever your brand logo is. And then a little message will pop up on the screen in the corner. Usually it says, press escape to enter setup, or press F10 for BIOS settings, or something to that effect. You click in, you go into these primitive looking menus, and you look for virtualization or VTX and see if it is, there's a switch to turn it on and off. Most machines switch with the switch, or ship with the switch turned off, because most people don't use it, right? But you can turn it on, and then you can run pieces of software like Oracle's VirtualBox and run other operating systems. So it's kind of interesting. So it's kind of fun to play with as well. You do also need to have a high-speed internet connection, and I'm going to say that I like to throw the word stable into it. So like I'm hoping they have a good internet connection at home. If you do not, and you do not have the equipment that you need at home, Gateway will provide it for you. So I just want to repeat that. So if you don't have good internet at home, ask me or one of your instructors. They can get you a Wi-Fi hotspot that they can send home with you, where you have good, stable, high-speed internet connection, right? So if you have really crappy internet and you can't afford better, no embarrassment, just ask, we'll give you one. We pay for it, the government paid for it. It's there for the taking, just take it. We even have instructors, by the way, that have to use them too. I know that, Wendy's got high-speed internet at home, if you guys ever have her. Christopher's does not, because he lives out in the country. So he used to tether off his phone, and then Gateway provided him a hotspot. Now I can be online at home. Otherwise, I think like Spectrum wanted to charge him like $20,000 or something to run lines to the house, because he's out in the country and his house is back from the road, and it's just insane, right? You don't think about that stuff. It's like you just assume internet is everywhere, but the truth is, he lives in Bristol. You can't get good internet there. It's not that far away, right? Or you could live here in the city of Racine, where typically the internet's excellent if you have Spectrum or AT&T. Right? What's that? Is it unlimited? That I don't know what the plan is. I think it is unlimited. Yeah. I think they buy them in bulk, so they have like a bulk plan that they use. And I think the hotspots work on US Cellular, which in our district is actually really good. In Racine, I'm a US Cellular customer, and I do like downloads on my phone, and I am blown away at the transfer speeds I get like down here. Better than downtown Milwaukee. Yeah. Well, the 5G is kind of spotty, It's got pretty short transmission radius. Software-wise, okay, we already talked about Windows, so we're okay with that. But we will also need access to a bunch of different browsers. So one thing that we will talk about as we go is like what browsers to install. Some of you might just have Chrome and might not want to install anything else. That's fine, right? We're not going to push you. A smart web designer, though, will do this. And this has always been me whenever I would do web work, is I would have on my desk a PC, a Mac, also usually a Linux machine, an iPad, a tablet, my phone, whatever. I'm testing on all the devices and all the browsers, because you cannot guarantee that if you create something for one environment, that I'm going to move it over to the Mac and it's going to look good, move it over to the phone and it's going to look good. I can't ensure that. The only way to know is to test all of them, right? There's emulation that you can do too, but you will find that a lot of professional developers will do that. They'll be multi-platform and have both systems up and running at all time. Load up the web pages in both. And always keep in mind, mobiles are number one for web surfing. So in a lot of ways, that becomes our primary output mechanism, strangely enough. You will need access to an Office suite. So here at Gateway, you have access to both Office 365 and the Google App Suite, which is that you can get to through your email account, right? So like if you have your email account up on the screen like I do here, you just click the little waffle icon here and you can get to all the apps. If you're looking for Office 365, sign into My Gateway, and then somewhere they have like a card that's got this stuff, and you can get into the Office suite by just clicking Office 365. That'll launch the browser-based version of the products. But interestingly, if you go in there, you can also install Office on any of your, up to 5 computers with your Gateway account, by the way. So that's pretty cool. No cost involved, folks, so take advantage of that. Other software we're going to use, we're going to try some of this today right away, is I'm going to introduce you to some text editors that are coding engines. We're going to work with some FTP software. That's what we use to transfer files back and forth from web servers. And then eventually we're going to dig into a bunch of different IDEs. I have my preferences. Other instructors have their preferences. I'm going to try to show you all of them, and you can try them all, and then pick the one you like best. You know, that's usually the way I prefer you do it, and it's not bad to know multiple programs. All the graphic stuff we're going to use, we can download for free, and there's nothing here that you have to pay for. But if you're willing to pay, and I'm just kind of putting it out there, there are some really good paid products that are worth the money. And that really, yeah, Adobe is really kind of like the main suite. We don't force people in the web program to buy it because it is expensive. And you know, it is a monthly subscription and it costs more than Netflix. You know what I mean? And then when you turn pro, the price really goes up. Now, if you're working with it all the time, it's a drop in the bucket. Yeah. But if you're a student and you know you're struggling for gas money, it's probably not a wise move. However, there are trial versions, and you can also kind of share a subscription with your family, which is what I do. So I buy the subscription, and then my kids, who are both into doing artistic endeavors electronically, are using it too. So still in many ways, some of the preferred tools. Since we are going to be doing Zoom stuff, I do have this little Zoom etiquette thing. These are not rules, by the way, just kind of like common sense things. We're not a Zoom heavy class, so I'm not going to really talk about that too much. But if you guys need help with Zoom or working it, just let me know. I'm glad to demonstrate. I can show some of the basic features that you might use. All right. So folks, that's Unit 0. I'm going to cap the recording here in just a minute. I just want to talk about one last thing before we leave Unit 0. And that is to take some time to kind of poke around the course shell a little bit and kind of familiarize yourself with how I do things. If you have no other instructors or have not done any other classes here at Gateway, you will notice I kind of put my course shells together in a little bit different way than some other instructors. I'm a web guy, so I really like, you know, like when you land in a course, to land on a home page. That's easy to navigate. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn the veil off so you can see like the whole course for just a moment. And you'll notice all the units of instruction, the ones that are still hidden. So we have 9 units of instruction and exams folder that you're not seeing. And then all of that stuff also appears on the home page. The thinking is you can get to any part of the course with one click, right? Either from the sidebar or the home page. Will get you to any part of the course, no subfolder navigation or anything like that. Other interesting areas on the sidebar here, we have the announcements page. So when I was sending out those announcements in advance of class, this is where they're generated from. And that pops up in your email. A lot of instructors use this as their homepage, which I think is really weird from a web guy perspective, mind you. But this is where you can find those if you maybe missed something. The syllabus area, where the syllabus was, the course calendar and points, and then my instructor info, which is my personal schedule along with the office hour listing. So you can see those little yellow boxes. That's when my office hours are. Right? And then when I'm in class. So like if you're looking for me on a Thursday night and I'm not responding, it's, I'm in data analytics. So that's what I'm doing. I also have a bunch of online courses. The other sidebar entries that can kind of be helpful, the discussion board, I have a little introduction thing in there if you guys want to do that. That's optional, I believe. But there's also the resources tab where I have links to the publisher's website, Wendy's web developer resources. We'll look at all this stuff as we go. The Azure cloud, that's where you get your Windows license key from, by the way. Info about Office 365, a code share window, and just explain that one really quick. Sometimes I type up code in class really fast and you guys can't keep up or whatever, and I just copy paste it into that environment. You can go in there and copy paste it and pull it into yours. Some useful links, and then resources from the 10th edition of the textbook are also there. Finally, I have a link here to LinkedIn Learning, which is an online video course format platform. It's owned by Microsoft through LinkedIn. You guys that's a professional social network, by the way. But what's inside LinkedIn Learning is hundreds, if not thousands, of complete courses relative to technology topics. And if you're interested, you have the whole library at your disposal while you're a student. First time I encountered this and we had access to it, I signed in, and the thing that came up was on tour with Rush. Rush is like a rock band, some of you guys might know them, whatever. And I was a huge fan as a kid and whatever. And what it was like video talking about how they set up their whole concert, like set up the speakers and the lights and how they dial everything in, like everything. And I just sat down and watched the whole darn thing because I thought it was just so cool, right? But there's complete courses like that in here. There are courses on HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Some of the courses are actually, we have one of our instructors, Christian Herr, who's created content here on this platform. I don't know how he finds the time to do it, honestly, but hey, more power to him, right? Great resource, by the way. Really good gap filler too. So like if you guys are going for a job interview and they're looking for a skill that you didn't learn in school, you can come here, do a quick course, learn something about it, and go to the interview and talk like you know, right? Get hired. So that's why I like to point it out. And it's free. You guys get complete access. All right, that's Unit 0. Any questions on Unit 0? You guys good? All right. I'm going to kill this recording.